Do you want a cloud storage system like Google Drive while keeping full control of your own data? With NextCloud, you can build a private cloud to store, synchronize, and share your files from anywhere. In this video, I'll show you how to deploy a complete NextCloud server on a Linux VPS with a custom domain and free SSL. Before we begin, make sure you already have a Linux VPS with a LAMP stack installed, including Apache, MariaDB, and PHP. If not, you can check out my LAMP stack installation guide linked in the video description below. Now, connect to your Linux server via SSH, and we'll start by updating the package repositories and the existing software packages on the system. Next, we'll install the required PHP extensions along with a few additional tools needed for the installation and operation of NextCloud. Once the installation is complete, log in to your MariaDB or MySQL server. Next, we'll create a dedicated database and user account for NextCloud. We'll create a database for NextCloud, including the database name, username, and password. Be sure to replace these sample values with your own information. Copy and run the following commands one by one to create the database, user account, and grant the required privileges for NextCloud. Once you're done, apply the privilege changes using the flush privileges command and then exit MariaDB or MySQL. Next, navigate to the Apache document root directory where we'll download and deploy the NextCloud source code. Here, download the latest version of NextCloud from the project's official website. Once the download is complete, you'll have a zip archive like this. Extract it to obtain the NextCloud source code. After extraction, you'll have a directory named NextCloud. You can keep this name or rename the directory to suit your needs. Next, set the ownership of this directory to the account used by Apache so that the web server can access and manage the NextCloud files. Then, adjust the directory permissions to ensure that NextCloud can operate properly and to help avoid permission-related issues during use. Once completed, the ownership and permissions of the directory should look like this, indicating that they have been configured correctly. Next, create a dedicated virtual host configuration file for NextCloud so that Apache knows how to handle requests for this application. Next, add the configuration content that I've already prepared for this file. You can view and copy the configuration template from the video description below. Please note that if you renamed the NextCloud directory in the previous step, make sure to replace the paths in the configuration file with your new directory name. Once you're done, save the configuration file and exit the editor so we can proceed to the next steps. Next, enable the virtual host configuration file we just created so that Apache can use it for NextCloud. At the same time, disable Apache's default configuration file to avoid conflicts and ensure that incoming requests are directed to NextCloud. Next, enable a few required Apache modules to ensure that NextCloud can function properly and as expected. Finally, restart the Apache service to apply all the configuration changes we've just made. Now, let's check the status of the Apache service to make sure all the configurations have been applied successfully and that no errors have occurred. If the Apache status shows active like this, it means the service is operating normally and we can proceed to the next step. Next, check the firewall status on your server. If the status is active, you'll need to allow Apache through the firewall before proceeding. Now, allow ports 80 and 443 through the firewall if they haven't already been added to the allow list. These two ports are required for accessing NextCloud over HTTP and HTTPS. Then, check the firewall status again. If you can see ports 80 and 443 in the allow list, it means the firewall has been configured correctly and we can proceed. At this point, we've completed all the required configurations. Now, let's check the server's IP address so we can access NextCloud. Copy the IP address from the output, then open your web browser and use it to access NextCloud. On your first visit, create and configure the administrator account for your NextCloud server. This account will be used to manage the entire system going forward. For the Data folder section, if you don't have any special requirements, you can simply keep the default location suggested by NextCloud. Next, in the database configuration section, enter the database information we created earlier, including the database name, username, and password. Once you're done, click the Install button to begin the installation and initialization process of your NextCloud server. Once you reach this interface, it means your NextCloud server has been installed successfully and is ready to use. However, you'll need to remember this public IP address every time you want to access your server, which can be inconvenient and less professional. If you already have your own domain name, you can point it to the public IP address of your NextCloud server. If you don't have your own domain name, then, in the next steps, we'll create a free domain name together so you can access your NextCloud server more easily and conveniently. In this video, I'll be using NoIP. This service allows us to create a free hostname that maps to our server's public IP address, making it easier and more convenient to access NextCloud without having to remember the IP address. If you don't already have an account, click the Sign Up button to create one with just a few simple registration steps. Once your account has been created successfully, sign in with your account to continue with the next steps. With a free account, you'll get one free hostname that needs to be renewed approximately every 30 days. Therefore, keep an eye on your email and renew it on time to avoid expiration and losing access to your server through that hostname. In the host field, enter the hostname that you'd like to use to access your NextCloud server. Next, choose a domain suffix from the list provided by NoIP. These are the free domain extensions that you can use with your hostname. Next, in the IP address field, enter the public IP address of your VPS so that this hostname points to the correct server. Finally, click Create to create the hostname and map it to your VPS's public IP address. Okay, you can now access your NextCloud server using the hostname you just created. Open your web browser and give it a try. For security reasons, NextCloud only allows access through domains that have been added to its trusted domains list. Now, let's go back to the SSH terminal and add the hostname we just created to the NextCloud configuration. Now, open the NextCloud configuration file so we can add the hostname we just created to the list of trusted domains. In the configuration file, locate the trusted_domains section. Here, add the hostname or domain name that you just created to the list of domains allowed to access NextCloud. Once you're done, save the changes and exit the configuration file. Next, reopen the NextCloud Server Virtual Host configuration file. Here, enter your hostname or domain name in the server name field. This will be the address that users use to access your NextCloud server. Once you're done, save the changes and exit the configuration file. Finally, restart the web server service to apply the changes we've just made. You can now access your NextCloud server using the hostname or domain name you just configured without having to use the public IP address anymore. Okay, but we still have one issue. As you can see, the website is not yet protected by an SSL certificate. The connection is still using HTTP, and the browser displays a not secure warning, which can affect the security and trustworthiness of the system. Therefore, in the next steps, we'll deploy a free SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt to secure the connection to our NextCloud server. At the SSH terminal, run the following command to request an SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt for the domain name we just configured. To begin the SSL certificate issuance process, first enter your email address. Next, type Y and press Enter to agree to Let's Encrypt's terms of service. Next, you can enter Y or N, depending on whether you'd like to receive email notifications from Let's Encrypt. If the output looks like this, it means the SSL certificate has been issued successfully, and Apache has been automatically configured to use HTTPS. Now, refresh the web page. As you can see, the connection is now secured with an SSL certificate, and the not secure warning has disappeared. So, we've successfully deployed a NextCloud server on a Linux VPS using a LAMP stack, a custom hostname, and a free SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.